lot of law enforcement agencies are struggling with low morale, recruitment challenges, and a tarnished reputation. If you're ready to transform your agency, to strengthen your team, and build trust in your community, we're here to help. The Elevate Your Call to Service podcast shares a revolutionary approach to leadership development. Join us and discover how to elevate your leadership journey and your agency to new heights of excellence.
We're your hosts, Michael and Kathy McIntosh. Mike is a retired sheriff and current bureau chief in the Denver metro area with nearly 40 years of law enforcement experience.
Kathy is a business and branding expert with a unique perspective on the human side of law enforcement.
Together, we share a powerful blend of practical experience and insightful roadmaps to elevate your call to service.
Well, welcome back. We're going to start with a question today. Is it more beneficial for a team to have a track record of completed projects or a leader who helps the team feel heard and unified?
Well, I will tell you that in my very first experience of leading a team, I learned the hard way that it's much more beneficial to have trust and have a team that feels heard and recognized and seen. I'm embarrassed to say, and we only get to successful positions because we've failed repeatedly, and failure is what kind of moves us towards success, right? And in my first assignment leading people, I was so task-oriented and so checklist focused that I literally started to crush my team. And it was a very, very hard learning curve. So I would say from experience that it's much more important for a team to feel connected than to feel productive.
Yeah. Now, imagine for me being stranded on ice, no help's coming, and your boss keeps everyone not just alive, but hopeful. Now that's leadership.
For sure. And I know that you have an incredible, powerful story to share, and I can't wait to dig into it. But before we get into that, I wonder if you could just share from all of your immense experience in law enforcement specifically, what's one situation where you saw a leader who was really shining, not just managing, but helping his people or her people become the best that they could be?
Yeah, I would say that over the years, I've had a lot of examples of kind of those opportunities or those times where I've had leaders that have really demonstrated great leadership. And as I reflect back, a lot of times I didn't recognize it in the moment, right? It isn't until you kind of reflect on it, you take a moment to sit back and really think about the influence that they had. And one of the guys that had a lot of influence on me early in my career when I was a patrol deputy, he was just like, to me, the epitome of what you really wanted a leader to be. He was a guy that allowed you to talk through the problem. In law enforcement, we deal with a lot of problems.
Sure.
But to really kind of work that problem with his guidance, with his direction, with his oversight, I would say, in all of that. He never came in and said, we're going to do it this way. It was always an opportunity for me to grow, for other teammates on my team to grow. And I can't tell you how beneficial that was when we would get into a crisis, when we would get on a homicide scene, or a situation would arise, to be able to go back and, one, know that he was there, gave you the confidence to move forward into that situation, knowing that you knew, what it was that you needed to do, because he had coached you through that, as the sergeant of the team.
But yet he knew somehow too that you might extrapolate data a little bit differently. You might come to different conclusions than he would have. And you've shared with me before, he let you make those decisions. It was never his way or the highway. It was, yeah, we're going to see things a little bit differently. I want you to do things the way that you're going to do them. But then he would coach you through these would be the potential consequences. If you look at a case and it looks like X, but we get to the DA and the DA wants to make it look like Y, he had the experience and the foreknowledge to coach you through that, but still let you do things in your own manner, in your own way, which is really what helped you grow.
Right. Yeah. I uh, there's a early on a case that, it didn't have a whole lot of significance, but it was complex. And I can remember coming to him with that case, with that problem, and told him what I wanted to do. And he explained what it is that he would do,
Mhm.
but then told me, but I want you to do what you would do in this case because you're on the right track. And just as you had talked, he knew what was going to happen with that case when it got to the DA's office. But he knew that one from experience, but he wanted me to experience that.
Mhm.
He wanted me to go through that process so that I understood it and so that I could utilize that experience and that knowledge the next time I had a case that involved some of the same circumstances.
Mhm. And a manager is somebody that I'm very prone to be, which is somebody who focuses on tasks and deadlines and rules and protocol. And a leader, on the other hand, is someone who focuses on team energy and ideas. And in this case, with this supervisor that you're talking about, on team growth. So he was willing to honestly do the hard work. It would have been easier for him to say, no, let's do it this way. Let me correct your path. But instead, he took the harder road for himself and for you and said, okay, let's learn through this together. And by the time you're in court testifying about this case, you're going to know full well
Mm.
the ins and outs and how all the things works. But he let you step by step have an interactive role in your own development.
Right. Walk through that process.
Yeah,
Yeah.
really, really good stuff. Managing is critical, and one of the things that we talk about often is we need both good managers and good leaders. And then we also say that sometimes managers will have to lead, but more often leaders are actually also going to have to manage. So you have to be able to balance your roles. And again, this was a hard lesson that I had to learn. But once the wheels start moving and you start to be more people focused instead of task focused and procedure driven, everything changes. And you've got a remarkable story to share. I'd love to hear it, and I know our listeners would too.
Yeah. In going through and prepping for a a leadership live stream that I was doing, I ran across a story that I think really illustrates how you have to manage. I mean, it's critical to manage, but you also have to lead,
Mhm.
right? And this this story illustrates how both of those basically saved many men's lives um, when they got stranded. And so I talked a little bit about imagine being stuck on ice and not being able to call for help and really not knowing what tomorrow brings, right? So there's a guy by the name of Ernest Shackleton, and in 1914 he decided that he was going to uh, grab a crew and sail down to the Antarctica, and he was going to walk across the Antarctica. Nobody had ever done that before, and he wanted to be kind of one of the first explorers to be able to do that. Him and his crew.
kind of makes me think of climbing Everest, right? That's kind of what
Right.
everybody wants to do now. At one point, it had never been done, and now,
Yeah, and now people do it, right?
yeah. But crossing the Antarctic on foot, why?
Right.
Why would you want to do that?
Exactly. And in 1914, nowhere near the technology that we have in
Mhm.
2014
Or the
and
safety gear.
2025, right? So he gathers this crew. They sail from England to or towards the Antarctica. And I think that we've all heard stories about some of the storms that can come up in the Antarctica when you get down there, and literally you can get stuck in the ice. And that's exactly what happened with this ship. He had a crew of 27 men. They get on this ship, they get down there in that area, and they get stuck in the ice. So much so that it completely surrounds them. And eventually, this ice completely envelops this wooden ship and crushes it, just like a tin can. And the men had to abandon the ship, try to get all of the rations that they could, and they were going to have to survive on this floating ice, hopefully waiting until the ice broke up enough that they could get their lifeboats out and out into open water. And they were able to do that. Um, but it was the leadership that Shackleton displayed on a daily basis with his men that really kept them alive. It was obviously you have to manage. You have to look at the rations. You have to make sure that they get the lifeboats out. You have to plan for the day. But it's so much more than that. He put his heart into it. He worked with those men. He kept them hopeful. He even joked, and when I first saw that he approached this at times kind of humorously, I thought, how do you even do that? And then I reflect back in law enforcement and kind of some of the times that we're on scenes and dealing with some of the situations that we deal with, and sometimes to sometimes to break that tension, to break that seriousness, to break we have cop humor is what we call it now. And I could just picture, being on the ice and making some silly joke or remark about, their situation, and how important that is. And you don't even really realize that, but when your leader is that connected to the people and to the team, you find yourself in situations where if they say it's true, if they say you can do it, and that's what Shackleton did, right? He told them that they were going to get through this, that they were going to get home, and that they were going to live to tell their story. And he he did that. He was able to, when the ice finally broke up, get a lifeboat. 3 or 4 guys went with him 800 miles to really find help to come back and rescue the rest of those men. And at the end of the day, actually at the end of the years, because it took them about a year and a half to accomplish all of this, he was able to rescue every one of those men, and not one of them perished, which
That's
is just amazing.
astonishing. Uh, You put yourself in that situation and imagine yourself, being on ice without a ship and really just kind of staring at your lifeboats, thinking that even those aren't beneficial to us right now. And then Shackleton had to have been gone for months and months and months. They had to start believing he was never coming back.
Absolutely.
And yet he promised that he would. And then how would it feel to see him on the horizon,
Right.
to realize, oh my gosh, we're rescued, we're
We're going to go
saved,
home.
we're going to go home. That's amazing. Absolutely an amazing story. And as we walk through our episode together, we'll talk through some of the ways that Shackleton learned and utilized the leadership skills of focusing on his people as opposed to managing the ship, right?
Right.
And what a difference that made in the lives of those 27 men. And again, the hard lesson is that leadership is about people.
People.
It's not just about plans,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so good. I love that quote that leadership is about people, not plans.
How you're um an incredible leader when it comes to staying calm under pressure. Anytime that we've had a family hiccup, a family emergency, things that just go awry, and we've dealt with some significant things, you seem to be the one who always stays grounded and calm. And I'll just say, how do you stay calm when everything's falling apart? And I'm even thinking about high stress calls at work where lives can be at stake, personal safety can be at stake. When officers need more than orders, they really need a leader that they know is in it with them, not somebody who's just, you know, in the command post and never really even rolling up his sleeves and getting out there and getting dirty, but somebody who's legitimately in the situation with them. How do you demonstrate that? How do you stay calm in those moments?
I would say that, being a student of leadership and watching how over the years how others that have been in charge have handled that. And I've seen some really great examples and I've seen some really poor examples. And as a student and wanting to learn, those observations have really had a huge impact on the way that I have shaped and molded and wanted my leadership to come across to others,
Mhm.
because I've seen what's worked and I've seen what hasn't worked, and obviously our goal is to develop those styles that work, that have an impact with others. And there's a couple of examples that people can see in real life, and not even really understand what it is that they're seeing. And I mean, there's fear out there in different things. And first couple of times you fly and you start to go through some rough turbulence, my eyes immediately went to those that are in charge, right? Are the flight attendants
Mm,
concerned?
mhm,
Because if they're not concerned, they've been through this before. They're not concerned. I don't need to be concerned about that.
mhm.
And even looking around, at some folks that you figure are probably more experienced and tenured and have gone through things like that. And I use that as an example because that's the way that I've kind of developed my leadership style in crisis,
Mhm.
is understanding through experience, one, knowing what your team can do,
Mhm.
who it's made up of, and their strengths and weaknesses.
Mhm.
And then just through experience, knowing that, you know, if you remain calm, and if you work the problem calmly, your chances of a positive outcome far outweigh if you let yourself get into kind of an emotional spiral,
Sure.
because then who's going to start leading you?
Mhm.
If you look like you've lost control
As the leader.
as the leader because of the way that you respond to crisis situations, you are not going to be able to handle that situation.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think back to, the years that you spent in the Navy on the flight deck of the aircraft carrier, and you were in a position literally on the flight deck handling the planes, one tiny little mistake could cost your life or your friend's life in an instant, right?
Yep.
Snap your fingers, it's all over. And so you had to train and do that repetitive work again and again and again and again and again until you develop that muscle memory and until you knew your level of confidence that you could understand that you could do this work. And I think about taking that and extrapolating that from a rookie sailor, really, to a leadership who's a CEO and leading a large organization. It just continues to multiply on itself. Each step that you take just reinforces that repetitive nature and helps you realize the leader that you can be and that you can stay calm and that you can do what's right for your team. Even when you're shaking and trembling on the inside, even when you can't really see the outcome of a situation, and I know that's happened numerous times
Yeah.
before, you still have to put that front on that says, "We're ready for this. We've got it under control, and we've got a great team at our disposal. We're gonna get through this."
Yeah, and I would say, and I've reflected back before about, and again, it's one of those that you don't really realize it when you're going through it. But when I look at my, my career on a flight deck,
Mhm.
and when you're in flight ops and the jets are taking off and the jets are landing on that ship, and the sea is rolling, and all of the things that go with that, and the danger that's there. um it's kind of high stakes leadership.
Mhm.
It's decisions that, if you're not making the right ones, it could cost somebody their life. And then rolling into law enforcement, and there's bringing that experience with me, I think has really kind of helped,
Sure.
for that life lesson, that profession lesson in leadership, and how to respond in, again, in critical situations.
Mhm. Mhm. What's one thing that you feel like Shackleton did in his example that any law enforcement leader could start to do this week to just strengthen teams and show people that you care more about them than you do about accomplishing a purpose or a task?
When I look at that story in Shackleton's situation, to me, it's that he knew his men. He knew their strengths, he knew their weaknesses, he knew what it is that motivated them, and he knew that because he listened and he observed what it is that they did and how they would react to different situations. So you can lean into somebody, you can come around somebody and provide what it is that they need if you're watching, if you're paying attention, if you're intentional about that. And I think that as leaders, the sooner we do that with the people that are kind of in our sphere of influence, the more effective we're going to be, the quicker at being able to provide that resource for them that that they're going to need in a time of crisis or a critical incident.
That's so, so good. We're going to extrapolate this out into some practical steps here in a few minutes, and I'll give a little sneak preview. The first one is listen. And we're going to talk about actively listening and actually trying to find out more about your people. But
Right.
what you just said takes it to another level because I feel like if you're watching and paying attention, your team may not even realize that you know the name of their wife.
Yeah.
You know they've got two kids at home.
Right.
You know that they're planning a vacation to San Diego next week just because you're watching and listening from maybe from a distance.
Mhm.
But you can still glean enough information to where if you speak into that, I mean, how good does that feel to know that somebody noticed you, you feel seen, you feel heard, you feel valued?
Right.
And on the other side of that, When you have somebody who doesn't look at leadership as people driven, it starts to lead to burnout. We've
Yep.
talked about that numerous times. Frustration. It starts to breed distrust when maybe I don't feel like you have my back.
Mm.
That doesn't feel good. That's not pleasant. And you start to lose that sense of teamwork and unity, but you start to also lose the sense of why you're doing this job at all. Why does it even matter?
Right.
So there's definitely two sides to that coin. Uh, and then we pair into that. There's been a Gallup poll that shows that 70% of people leave a job because of their boss, not because of the job that they do, not because of the work. The work's not too hard, the work's not too complicated. It's that they're butting heads or they don't feel valued by the person who is supervising them.
Right.
That's not a pleasant place to be. So when we start to look at what the practical steps are, um, you've got a great framework that you've shared with your team and on those leadership live streams that we've talked about before. Can you walk us through that?
Sure. Yeah. It's again, if you've been a part of this podcast, the simpler we can make things, the better. So, we like to say that we love us an acronym. So we came up with LIFT, and that is kind of 4 steps to be able to make sure that we're caring for people and that we're watching them hopefully soar,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
And when you start to break down lift, the first thing that you really need to do is listen.
Mhm.
And that's, going back to that
Key to
question.
secret.
Yeah, that question that you had asked me earlier. I kind of walked right into that one, right? But really it's about listening to your officers, asking them how they're feeling. I can imagine and it's, reported that, Shackleton was right there, right? And he talked to his men on a daily basis. It wasn't a, I'm the leader. I'm going to be over here,
In my
under
cushy quarters.
right under shelter,
Mhm,
and I will get your orders to you. He was right there with them.
mhm.
He was talking to them, and to me, that's where all of that begins.
Sure. Sure. So listening, as I said, could be listening from afar. It could also be making time for a coffee chat or even just taking a few minutes to ask personal questions about the people that you work with and how far that goes. After a tough call, after a tough day at work, at the office, I wanted to say, but at work,
Yeah.
um, you can pull an officer aside and really just ask, how you holding up? How are you feeling? Not just what did you see, what did you do, but how do you feel?
Yeah.
Really important questions.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think the next step in lift is the I, which is ignite, and it's really to ignite that goal, ignite that passion in them. And I would imagine for somebody like Shackleton, it's like our goal is to be able to go home again,
Mhm.
right? And that's not uncommon in law enforcement. I mean, that is the goal that you will hear in patrol briefings day in and day out. We want to go home.
Yep.
At the end of the day, we want to all go home, right?
Yep.
That's one of our primary goals. Um, and that's what drives us to ensure that we're being safe, that we focus, that we follow the training and the knowledge that we have to guide us where we need to go.
And we talked a couple of episodes ago about the importance of having a clear mission statement and knowing the destination that you're marching toward as a team and what a difference that makes when you know your why. And you could just tell your team, we're doing more than just patrolling. We're building a safer city. And yes, we want to go home to our families and we want to go home safely. So let's get that done.
Yeah, and it's really important to whether it's weekly or daily, but what is our team's goal today
Mhm.
beyond that?
Mhm.
Beyond the we're all going to go home safe, because we know that that's, and we keep that very, very upfront, right? But like you said, what is our goal ahead? What is our task? What is it that we're trying to accomplish this week?
Mhm.
And then you want to, the F is foster, right? Mentor your team. And this is not just you as the supervisor's responsibility, but it's putting team members together, right?
Mhm.
Finding that senior cop that knows how to work a certain kind of case or a certain kind of call, and that some newer deputy really needs that mentoring.
Beyond the FTO program
Yeah, put them
on
together.
a regular Tuesday.
Yeah, put them
Yeah.
put them together, or make sure that when that call comes out, that you're either sending that senior officer over there to help them walk through that process, or that um, that sending that rookie over there, or that younger cop, to one of those calls that the senior officer is on, so that they can see how it's done. So it's really making sure that we're fostering our team to be better.
Yeah,
That
you're
there's a
fostering that
mentor.
growth, you're fostering development, you're fostering furtherance. And that's such a good reminder. And I know that you and I have both benefited so much from people who have mentored us and encouraged us along the way and help us to become better at who we are, no matter what roles we're facing. And it's also so critical to know that we're not in this alone. Nobody's just thrown us out there and said, go figure it out yourself. We're here to support each other and encourage each other, and we're here as a team. That is such a great reminder for everyone.
Yeah. And then the T is thrive. We don't want to just get through, right?
Mhm.
When you talk about growing, we want to grow. We want to thrive. We we want to make a difference. And you know, when you go back and you look at that story with Shackleton, he mentored his team, and he was able for his team to thrive. And one of the statements that we make about that is that, you know he he didn't manage that team to death. He didn't manage that ship to death. He he managed that team or led that team to thrive, right?
He led them to life, right?
And through that, right,
Mhm.
that every one of them were able to live through that incredible
An
experience.
incredible experience. And I love the reminder to lift our teams. I love the acronym. I love the significance, the symbolism of it. We really want to lift them up. And the steps are so practical. They're things that we can do even when our schedules implode and things get really busy and it feels like, the day just flipped itself upside down. We can still take small steps every day to walk through that lift system. So, so good. But I also know there's some leaders that think, I don't have time for this. How would you address that?
I it's one of those. I think that lift, and I think leaning into your team and being a part of your team, you're actually getting time returned to you,
Mm,
because
that's such a great way to look at it.
well, um when you're not having to continue to bark orders at them, and to kind of drive them that way, when you lead and you demonstrate that you care, you're shifting that focus, and they have the desire to be out there and work hard for a strong leader,
For a
right?
leader that they want to follow.
Exactly. So you're no longer pushing, you're leading, you're guiding, you're directing. And when that starts to happen, you actually start to get time back. And it allows you an opportunity. If you see something that is a little bit different in somebody's demeanor, that you can, that you can just walk alongside them and say, "Hey, are you doing okay? What's going on?" And if you've built up that trust, they're going to be honest with you, and it's going to give you an opportunity to help them, and you know whether they get real personable about it or not, but you can help them through that process.
Well, this Shackleton story is motivational and inspirational, and just there's so much depth to it, for something that happened over 100 years ago. We love to end our podcast episodes with a challenge, and I think that challenge is the L.I.F.T framework. So walk
Yeah.
through just that acronym one more time, and
Yeah. So we just want you to listen, be there, understand, know who your team is, and then ignite. Just make sure that there's always a common goal, that the whole team understands what it is that we want to accomplish today or this week, or what's the what's the intent, what's the end game for why we're moving in this direction, right? And then foster your team, mentor them, make sure that you're pairing people together, based upon their different knowledge base, experience, strength. And then the biggest piece of all of this is thrive. Have fun doing it. Make that culture, that community that you have, make it a place that everybody wants to take part in. And when they're thriving, they're growing, right? And they can soar,
so good. Leadership is about people, not about plans.
right?
That's really the bottom line.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, you bet.
Ready to build a stronger team, improve your reputation, strengthen officer safety, and recruit top talent? Visit us at leleaders.com and schedule a call with us today. We'd love to discuss how our coaching programs, workshops, and keynote addresses can help you build proactive leaders in a reactive profession.
In the meantime, if you like what you've heard today, we'd love your 5-star review on Apple Podcasts.